Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the Radical Racing Challenge. J.R. Gregory here on the call. Beside me in the booth, as always, Racing Ron Mons, and in the production facility, Joshua Wilkie. He will be pushing your buttons and spinning your dials today. Week 12 of the Radical Challenge brings us to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, previously known, of course, as Mosport. A lot of rich racing history at this facility, opening all the way back in 1961 in Ontario. They just celebrated their 60th anniversary, and over the course of that 60 years, we have seen Can-Am, Trans Am, the Formula One Grand Prix up until Canadian Grand Prix up until the late 70s, and MotoGP. Currently, probably the hot ticket at Canadian Tire Mosport Park is IMSA, and as we were just discussing prior to the broadcast, IMSA getting better and better. So if you have a chance to show up at this circuit, you are going to have a good time seeing those new LMDH cars. It's a 2.5 mile, 4-click circuit, 10 corners, and the current configuration track record is held, which I probably speaking of those LMDHs, probably not going to last much longer, but is held by an Audi R10 driven by Marco Werner. That's right, those old Audi diesel P1s were faster actually than a 70s F1 car. So Ron, has been our practice last couple rounds, we came out here and flogged some radicals prior to our broadcast. Pretty fun track, and one I was looking forward to, and really well suited to these radicals. The high speed corners really make the most out of the speed and downforce in these cars, although there were a couple of tricky spots. What'd you notice while we were driving today?
Oh yeah, you brought up tricky spots. Certainly, this was one of them, coming through the Moss hairpin here, as we're seeing Andres Frieder go through there right now. That was one of the tricky spots. I know we had a incident there. I went off, and then you followed me with a bit of a sympathy accident there, coming through that corner. But there's other tricky spots as well. I had some issues coming through the final corner of turn 10, White's Corner, as it's called on this circuit. Had a bit of a tank slapper coming through there, and with a very high curb on exit, that could see quite a few incidents throughout this race. And one thing that I'd like to keep an eye on is the start of this race. I've done some, remember many moons ago, I was doing some IndyCar races here with the AI, and it was actually faster for me to go into the pits and cut the final corner than actually stay on circuit. So we might see that come into play in the race if we have anyone that far back, but I don't think with the let's say, limited entry list that we have for tonight's race, I don't think anyone will use that trick at the start.
Yeah, 14 cars on the grid, and good point about turn 10. Very, very bumpy, an important place to put the power down. And here is our grid. Got Friedrich on pole. He's sitting in P2 on the season. Sanchez next to him. Benalit, I will say, Canuck up there in P3. Bjorklund will be beside him. De Graaf and Jorge Gonzaga, who we've seen many times, there in 5 and 6. Tognini and Romanen, another Canadian, there in row 4. Reagan and Ma, Murray and Harrison will be in 11 and 12. And in the last row, Dufresne Lay and MB Dickey out of the U.S. And boy, I'll tell you, one thing that I think we all noticed, and Josh was driving as well, this course invites riding the understeer through these long sweeping corners and blowing the front tires off these cars. And I think tire preservation may end up being a factor. And here we're looking at Friedrich. He is going to have the inside line headed downhill into turn 1 on the start. We'll see how that goes.
One thing to keep an eye on going through turn 1, I tested this on my final few laps, is the track limits through turn 1. The inside is completely on limits, so we might see some drivers use that during this race.
Yeah, and I think that is absolutely right. I was going back and forth between staying inside and staying outside of that. When you stay inside, you get another good 10 feet on the apex there. So you're right. We are going to see some people buzzing that pit wall on going through turn 1. And here we go. We are green. Friedrich is going to get off clean. Sanchez will keep his P2. Bjorklund P3, although he's got Benalit sniffing around there behind him. And here we go through this treacherous turn 2 for the first time. Can everybody keep out of the grass? So far, so good as we head down into Quebec corner. Wow, pretty good start on cold tires on these radicals, and a pretty challenging first couple of turns there, particularly that turn 2 blind apex over the crest.
Certainly very challenging on these open laps. It takes a few, probably like 4 or maybe 5 laps for these tires really to get into their operating window. But as we learned firsthand, it was very easy to also overcook your tires. I think like 10 laps into a run, I was having front tire temperatures well past 220 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure exactly what the conversion is to Celsius, but these tires can get can get pretty hot. We're seeing some battling here right now. My overlay is not working for some reason. I have some kind of technical issue, but we're seeing the number 3 and the number 5 here battling, coming through the final few corners, going through the S's there. That's a battle between Berlinold and De Graaf. We have seen both of the, actually no, my apologies, I believe that's a battle between Kamandre and Bjorklund and Benalit. My apologies there. But yes, it's some names that we haven't seen a whole lot of this season. We've seen, obviously, Andreas Friedrich. We've also seen Franco Sanchez and Jorge Gonzaga currently running in 6th. But a lot of the drivers up and down this grid we haven't seen too much of this year. So it's nice having new blood come into the series, even though the participation has been a little bit disappointing in these final few races of the season. It's still nice to have a good, fairly complete grid, 14 cars on track tonight, and all of them have made the start. As you can see, we have no drivers just immediately in the pit, so that's nice, and it's been a very clean start too.
Yeah, very clean start. Great job by these drivers in a very challenging high-speed circuit, and not a lot of movement in the top 10. We've got Carlos Dufresne Lay, I suppose, has moved up 4, and he's the hard charger so far, moving from P13 to P9. And I'll tell you what, Ron, the corner that we're looking at right now, that's the turn 8 coming off of the Andretti straight. That's where I'm looking forward to seeing some bold moves as the race wears on. It is possible to stick your nose inside in that high-speed entry to that last section of corners, and I suspect that we'll be seeing some drivers testing those waters, as particularly if we're looking at some close battles toward the end of the race.
I think one thing we might also see a little bit of, we've seen this throughout the season, we've seen a lot of drivers start to get impatient. They go get a bit racy. They try and push their limits a little bit. There's one driver that pushed their limits a little bit. I believe it's Harrison, who had a terrible lap last time around. He was about 2 seconds or so off. So certainly some drivers falling off. I believe Graf has made some kind of mistake. You can see him dropping down the running order. Yeah, you can see his car just stopped there on the outside of turn 5. So a mistake there coming through Moss Corner. We'll have to see what happened. That's a very easy corner to make a mistake on, because these cars are definitely susceptible to bumps, changes of elevation, and going downhill, curving in a braking zone. So I think it can catch a lot of these drivers, and we're going to see. So Harrison coming through there. That's the driver that had a big slide coming through there. Yeah, that's a big moment for the number 12 there of Harrison. He makes a mistake and loses a couple spots. But turn 5 is a very tricky corner for these drivers. It's downhill. You're going around a corner, trying to scrub off as much speed as you can. Frantically trying to scrub off speed going into turn 5, and plus you've got a lot of bumps to deal with, so that's a very challenging section for these cars. So we're seeing some drivers make mistakes here very early on.
Yeah, kudos to Harrison on the save there, though. And Graf, it looks like we saw him overcook the entry to Moss. So easy to do, as Ron said. You're flying down that hill. These cars have no ABS, and you really have to commit to get a good launch out of that section. And Graf bend it, overcooking that entry. It looks like he walled it and towed into the pit. So Graf looks like he is done, unless he elects to take the repair and keep rolling here. Meanwhile, we have Friedrich leading from Sanchez, Bjorklund, Benalid, Gonzaga, Tonini, Reagan, Lee. Looks like Ma just slipped past Murray for P9 as I'm reading down the list, and Murray will round out the top 10. And again, not a lot of shuffling, although Dufresne Lay continues to his march forward. He is now up 5 into P8.
Yeah, a lot of drivers. Ooh, saw some beating and banging there. I don't know if you saw that. Right as we cut to the replay, there was some beating and banging going through. I believe that was turn. Well, I'm not even sure what corner that was, but we're going to get a replay to see the move that Ma pulled off there. You can see the number 7 going side by side of these two drivers go down the Mario Andretti straightaway, the one straight line blast on this entire circuit. Besides that long, well, I say long, it's complete opposite word that I was looking for, the very short start-finish straightaway. That's really the only chance for these drivers to rest, and it's going to turn in it. So these drivers, not a lot of room to rest, and it's brought out some mistakes. I believe Dickey has made a mistake as well, so you can see him down the running order in 14th right now. He is towed back to the pits, and I believe will be out of it tonight. So multiple drivers making mistakes early on, not a lot of field shuffling, and right now Andres Friedrich is a man to reckon with. He has pulled a 4-second gap right now.
And Ma putting the move on the back straight there on Romanen, the hometown boy. And I'll tell you, if anybody ought to know that the left lane is the slow lane on the Andretti straight, it should have been the Canadian there, but he went left, and being slowed down by the greater elevation change on that side of the track, Ma drives right by him, and there, oh my goodness, there's an off going through those bumps I was telling you about on turn 10. Oh, and a dubious choice there to get on the throttle. Dickey out of Texas not going to make any friends with that maneuver. Should have held the brakes there, and it looks like we're going to lose 2 cars from Dickey's little incident coming out of that bumpy turn 10.
I believe that was So Harrison that picked up some damage, and now you can see he's about 20 seconds back of Murray right ahead of him. So now Harrison, he had that mistake early on that cost him dearly, and now he has another incident that really wasn't his fault there. It was just Dickey spinning it around and getting rammed quite badly going through the final corner. That's tough for those drivers. Very early mistakes, and right now I believe we have 2 drivers out of it. Dickey, I believe, has left the session. I believe Graf as well. He is back in the pits after making that mistake a couple laps ago, so I believe we have 2 drivers. Certainly have contention, and we might have 2 drivers just not rejoining the race altogether in the final half of this race. We haven't talked about it too much. 20-lap race, which is, I believe, the longest lap count-wise that we've had so far this season, but right now the laps are just chugging by. Only 1 minute 13, 1 minute 12 laps that these drivers are setting, so it's a very quick lap here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, but we're seeing the laps tick away right now. We're 7 laps into this 20-minute race.
And Dufresne Lay here is sniffing around the back of Ma. We saw Ma make that move to move up on the back Andretti straightaway there, and I'll tell you, Dufresne Lay is going to be in position to do something with that draft this time on Moss. So we'll see if they have any action between those two here. And meanwhile, what have we got going on? There's Reagan taking up the back. Still Friedrich up front has driven away. He's got a 4-second gap that is increasing. Looks like Sanchez and Bjorklund switched positions there. I've looked away from the monitor. Not sure if we caught that. And here's Romanen now, where he's he's really stubborn about sticking to that left side of that back straight, but makes it work that time. He must have got a little toe there. And Ma looks like he dropped 2. Might have got a bad exit out of the tight Moss complex there, which really a critical area. And if you overcook the first part, you're going to ruin the second part. And it can really be tough on you to get a bad exit going onto that critical Andretti straightaway.
Yeah, we're going to get a replay here to see a pass here. Kim-Andre Bjorklund, who's run a pretty quiet race, all things considered. He's going to pull off a pass here on Sanchez, I believe, coming through. This is going down the Mario Andretti straightaway there. You can see those two drivers line astern right now. Kim-Andre Bjorklund and Franco Sanchez have put together a pretty decent drive, all things considered. We saw Sanchez blink out a little bit there. I'm not sure if that was a connection issue on our end, but now we're seeing some battling here. These drivers are very close, going side by side, going down the Mario Andretti straightaway. Got to mention that as many times as he can. Oh, they're very close. That was nearly contact going into the S's of turn 8 and turn 9. That was extremely close, but Kim-Andre Bjorklund pulls off the move. The Sim Racing Norway driver, who I've seen quite a lot of in the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy. He's always been a strong contender in that series, and he's always been a very good contender in this series as well. Kim-Andre Bjorklund pulls off a fantastic move there on Sanchez coming through the S's.
Absolutely, and my goodness, you got some brass to stick one in there. As I was saying earlier, I love challenges for position there going into turn 8. You are just on the absolute ragged edge, both the passing car and the car being passed. Those two pulled it off beautifully, and Bjorklund moves back up. And I'll tell you, Sanchez and Bjorklund are not done. Only 9 laps in the books, 11 to go, and they are still staying quite near each other. So we'll be seeing those two scrapping. Continuing to scrap as we go forward. Little brain lock there. The excitement here at Mosport. My goodness.
I think we're having a little bit of brain lock. We're distracted by the beauty of this track, and we're distracted by the pretty good racing. There's some continual racing here. Sanchez is now trying to look for retribution against Kim-Andre Bjorklund in the same area that he got past a lap ago. He is trying to get past again, but unfortunately for him, he is going to that's not going to work out for him. He's going to lose that position after Kim-Andre Bjorklund gets the inside going into the penultimate corner of turn 9. So that was a decent attempt there from Franco Sanchez to get back into P2, but unfortunately for him, just not the section of the circuit where you want to pull off a move. But really, that's really the only section of the track where you can pull off a move. You have some heavy braking zones at turn 5, but the margin for error at that corner is just so difficult getting onto the brakes. I don't think we'll see too many passes there, and we haven't seen too many passes there besides drivers making mistakes. So I think going down towards the end of that straightaway, the longest straightaway on this entire circuit, that's really the only place where you can pull off a move. Unfortunately there for Franco Sanchez, he was not able to get it done on Bjorklund.
Yeah, meanwhile, we've got Moss sniffing around again. With Dufresne Lay there. Whoa, my goodness. And speaking of catches, somebody's got some quick reflexes going there.
That was Reagan.
Was that Reagan going fully sideways, coming out of Quebec and headed down under the footbridge there? My goodness. Not sure we can get another peek at that. Meanwhile, it looks like Bjorklund and Sanchez are still going back and forth. Not sure where they are on the track, but I just saw them switch positions on our timing tower. And those guys are putting on quite a show. My goodness.
Yeah, again, it looked like Sanchez tried to go for the move going into the S's, but unfortunately for him, just not a area where you can stick it too well. If you have the inside, you're usually in top-tip shape because these cars don't really respond too well with these very long sweeping corners. They don't have a whole lot of downforce to work with and a whole lot of mechanical grip either. So it's not like you can just stick it down the inside and we'll stick it around the outside and just power through. So it's definitely the inside line is what you want to be at, and that's really the one defensive move that we see a lot from these competitors. That could be the reason why Romanini went to the right-hand side going down the Mario Andretti straightaway, just trying to cover off that inside, because once you get to the outside going into turn 8, you're a goner. So I believe that might be some of the strategy that we're seeing in this race. We're 11 laps in, over halfway through.
And riding along with Ma now, he's still sniffing around behind Dufresne Lay. He's going to be set up for a run. And here are Bjorklund and Sanchez again. Looks like Bjorklund is going to cover the inside. Sanchez is going to try the outside. He's tried this a number of times and managed to get a nose ahead. But Bjorklund, with that inside of turn 8, is just able to maintain the better speed through turn 9. And wow, what a show between these two. And I'll tell you, Ron, based on our experience earlier today, I got to think we're getting to the point in the race where the people who have been overdriving these cars, overusing those long sweeping kind of tire shredding understeer situations that you find yourself in out here, those folks are going to be exposed here pretty soon, because those lap times are going to start to drop off.
Definitely the case. We've seen tire management play a big role throughout the season. We haven't mentioned it in a few rounds, mainly because these races are just so short that you don't really see it pop up too much. But at a track like this, which is it's definitely a tire killer, it'll cost you a lot. We're going to see possibly a mistake here from Samuel Ma. Speaking of people killing their tires, I believe we're coming into the turn 5 hairpin here. And ooh, that's a big slide, 2 slides there coming through turn 5. That's a very tricky spot with the weight shift in these cars. Kind of it's just very, very hard for those drivers to get through there cleanly. Made my fair share of mistakes for sure. So unfortunately for Samuel Ma, he makes a mistake coming through there, and it's going to cost him dearly as he drops down to the last of the front runners. When I say front runners, the last of the drivers on the lead lap. But ooh, that's a damage radical there. But getting back to the point you brought up is the tire situation at a track like this, where the tires just get killed on this very old asphalt in this version of Canadian Tire. It's definitely an outdated version of this circuit. I believe it's one of the first that iRacing has scanned, and one of the oldest iRacing scans, so I believe that could be the reason why we have a lot more tire wear from this circuit compared to anyone else. The tires definitely get overloaded at track layouts such as this, so they have that very long series of sweepers, a lot of long sweepers on this circuit that put a big put a big amount of wear and tear on those front tires. So I think tire management will definitely play a big role as we enter the end of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. And here is Sanchez. We're riding along with him as he's looking at the back of Bjorklund. Saw him flashing his lights there coming down the hill into turn 5, getting a little feisty is Sanchez. And let's see what Bjorklund wants to do here. Sanchez not close enough to threaten, so Bjorklund will go from the outside and take the normal racing line. And hearing a little bit of chatter from the drivers here, but Bjorklund will hold off Sanchez that time. And Sanchez looks like he's getting a little vibe of frustration off of him. We might see a send out of Sanchez with 6 laps remaining.
As much as a lot of these drivers are very patient, which is definitely a good virtue you have with this car, which is definitely on the understeery end with the fixed setup they have at this circuit.
He sent it. Wow.
That is a fantastic move there. You don't really see moves going into turn 3. But Franco Sanchez went for the send there on Kim Andre and Bjorklund. You called it there, JR. I think Sanchez was definitely getting a bit tired of seeing the back of Bjorklund's Radical SR10, so he just went for the dive going into turn 3, and thankfully for him, he avoided contact, but it's not over yet there. Maybe Sanchez picked up a slowdown there. He was very slow coming out of there, but he's going to pick up that slipstream, and I think he's going to try and go for a move here again going into turn 8. He's going to go around the outside. That's a very bold area to go for a move. I don't think it's the best strategy in the world, but Franco Sanchez is bold at this stage of the race. Hopefully it works out for him, because as we said a few laps ago, tire management will definitely play a big role, and if you're racing as hard as Sanchez and Bjorklund are racing, these tires on these Radical SR10s are going to be killed by the end of this race.
Yeah, boy, Bjorklund and Sanchez putting on such a show, and Sanchez keeps trying that outside and keeps getting the same result. Go in hot and wide there into turn 8, not really able to get back inside to the apex of 9, and Bjorklund's beating him to that apex. Oh my goodness, and a blade of grass and another handful of grass for Benalit there, who avoids disaster. Oh my goodness, that was quite a save. Obviously he lost quite a bit of time on that lap, but he could be picking his body panels out of the tires there, which is often the case if you go overcooked and slide off there in turn 2. Wow.
That was absolutely amazing. I was going to mention a few laps ago how he had caught up to this pack. It was probably about 6 seconds separating Benelod and this battle between Bjorklund and Sanchez. Probably about 5 or so laps ago, the gap was about 6 seconds. Now it's definitely increased, but even still, it's much closer now than it was quite a few laps ago, which just shows how these drivers have been battling. It was about 6 seconds between these drivers and Andreas Friedrich a few laps ago. Now it's stretched to 8, nearly 9 seconds. So these drivers are battling, and it's costing both of them pretty dearly at this stage of the show. So I think Friedrich will have a pretty commanding win to round off this season. But I think if those two drivers start battling even more, I think Benelod might get involved in this, might get involved in that fight again, even with that mistake. I think he definitely has time to close up to that pack once again.
Yeah, and taking a look at the lap times now, it looks like Friedrich is our fast man on track, high 112s, and try not to think about our practice session when you see that time on the board. But Friedrich, the fastest man on the track, is pretty much driven away. But Bjorklund and Sanchez, despite all the scrapping back and forth, only 3 or 4 tenths off of that pace. So, A, they're not losing as much time as I would have thought from all the back and forth that they're doing, and B, the lap times don't seem to be dropping off from tire dag as I was kind of anticipating. So we'll continue to keep an eye on those lap times, but so far so good. These radicals are eating up Mosport.
And these radicals, they're sleeper fast. You don't expect them to be as fast as they are, but you just see these drivers clocking 1 minute 13s, 1 minute 12s. These drivers are going very quick around here. And in these cars, there's also very little margin for error. So these drivers are definitely, they're going very, very quick around here. It's surprising how fast they're going. But at a track like this and at a car like this, it's very easy to make those mistakes. We saw that from Benelod last lap when, well, actually, I say that, it was probably 2 laps ago at this point when he went for a bit of lawn mowing coming through turn 2. If anyone's ever hit the inside grass of turn 2, they know how sad the inside grass is, and even the outside grass as well. It's just you hit that, and it's like you're driving on oil slick. It's just so, that was an incredible save from him. So these drivers are definitely, it's definitely a challenging combination. I certainly like it. It would be nice if we could have more drivers racing here, because this put on some very intriguing racing, and these drivers try and battle not only their competitors, but also the racetrack itself.
Oh, for sure. And I would have thought these radical drivers would have this one circled. Mosport's such a favorable track. And here comes Sanchez. He'll have the inside this time. He also got a better exit from Moss than Bjorklund. Bjorklund not putting up much of a fight, although he will try to stay side by side through turn 9. And is he going to be able to edge ahead here prior to turn 10? Bjorklund is not giving this up and pulls out of that ahead. I might need to see the overhead of that in slow motion. I am not sure how Bjorklund escaped Sanchez that time. Sanchez looked like he had that P2 in the bag, and Bjorklund kept the pedal down and came out of that still in P2. What a drive so far by Kim Andreas Bjorklund.
I'll tell you, I think Bjorklund has always been a cool customer. He hasn't really pushed his car too badly. Certainly he's pushing really hard trying to get out of the grasp of Sanchez, but we've seen Sanchez go for a lot of attempted moves and a lot of successful moves around Kim Andre and Bjorklund in this race. So I think as we're in the final few laps now, I believe we have coming up on 2 laps to go here, I think Sanchez has definitely used up a lot of his stuff, but he is not giving up. You gotta give him some props for just racing all the way up until the end. Sanchez, he's basically guaranteed a podium at this rate because Benelod, after that mistake, is so far back right now, 4.3 seconds back of this pack, but it's not over yet. If these two drivers crash into each other, which how hard they're racing now, how hard they've raced all throughout this race, it could definitely happen. Sanchez goes for the move this time around the inside, and he gets that move done on Kim Andre and Bjorklund. But I think in these final 2 laps, I'm sure Bjorklund is definitely going to try and fight back and take back that P2.
Wow, and you've kind of seen that. Oh, and Bjorklund goes wide into the grass there. Saw that coming, but Sanchez, you could feel his frustration, was getting nose up on Bjorklund lap after lap after lap, but somehow Bjorklund, the master of those final S's, managed to keep his speed up offline and come out ahead, but not that time, as Sanchez now up into P2. And what is going on with the timing tower now? Sorry, it looks like, just looking back, we're still looking at Friedrich in P1 from Sanchez, Bjorklund, Benelod, Gonzala, Tonini, Ragan, Romanen, Lay, and Ma. And apologies to all of you guys. I've seen a lot of drivers we haven't seen yet this season, and my pronunciation is reflecting that. But now we're looking at Ma and back to Dufresne, Lay. Those two have been going back and forth. They've swapped positions a few times in this one as we see them about ready to head down the hill into Moss.
Tell you, Dufresne Lay has put together a pretty good drive. I mean, he's sitting P9 right now, which is farther towards the back of the pack, but still, he's fairly new to the series in the races that I've done dating back to Season 1 of this year and running through now to the end of Season 3. I haven't seen him show up on these Friday broadcasts. He might have done a few radical races in the past, but maybe not on the Friday broadcast that we do here on Apex Racing TV, but he's put together a very good drive. Many drivers have put together a fantastic race. Andreas Friedrich has put together a good drive. He's on the last lap, and I'll probably take a commanding win. Right now we're seeing Samuel Ma try and go around the outside of Lay. That is a bold move there, but I think he's going to stick it there. He's going to get the inside line coming into turn 9. That's still going to be very close as they go into turn 10. That's nearly contact as they go in on the brakes going into turn 10, but that's still very close. But getting back to the point I was going to mention, Andreas Friedrich has put together an incredible drive. We haven't seen a dominating performance like him like this all season. I believe he hasn't won on these Friday broadcasts, but it's never too late to win a race, and for Andreas Friedrich, it looks like he's going to seal the deal on the last broadcast here of Season 3 of the Radical Racing Challenge here on Apex Racing TV. He does it at the final round of the season in Canadian Tire. He wins by 11 seconds, but we're seeing some more battling farther behind between Kim Andre and Björklund, who gets that second place on Sanchez. I believe he might have gone for the send going down the Mario Andretti straightaway, or going, ooh, that's very close there. It looked like Kim Andre and Björklund was nearly going to spin and hit the outside wall there and celebrating, but thankfully for him, he brings it home clean in a very impressive P2. Both of those drivers, Björklund and Sanchez, were racing each other as hard as they can. That was some fantastic stuff to watch.
Yeah, and while we were watching Friedrich cross the line, here is Björklund now coming off of the Andretti hairpin, heading into turn 8 with the draft. We've seen these two in this position over and over again. Björklund will make the outside work. Oh my goodness, that is some brass for Björklund. You saw that coming in both directions between these two drivers, and what a fantastic show that these two have put on. And Björklund is going to snag that P2 away from Sanchez. Wow, what a race.
Or JR, you can say brass balls here on Apex. That was a ballsy move there from Björklund. I think part of the reason why he was able to pull that off successfully was just because of the tire advantage. You know, it was something that we brought up multiple times during the broadcast, but I think it really played a big role there for Sanchez. Sanchez just didn't have the tires towards the end of that race, so he really couldn't pull away from Kim Andre and Björklund, and then Björklund just had the tire advantage coming through the final few corners to just stick it around the outside. That's a move that we didn't see successfully work pretty much all of this race. I think we saw it happen maybe once or twice throughout this 20 lap race here, Canadian Tire. So Kim Andre and Björklund puts on a fantastic move there and steals second place from Sanchez right before the buzzer.
Wow, and there are your results, folks. Andreas Friedrich is going to win round 12 of the Radical Racing Challenge, followed by Björklund and Sanchez. Those two fighting back and forth. I hope one or both of them, or actually I'd like to hear from the whole podium if they stop by the booth here for interviews following the race. Benalid, whose name I'm sure is I'm pronouncing wrong there in P4, Gonzaga, Tognini, Reagan, Romanen, Ma, Murray, Lay, Harrison, DeGraff, and Dickey will round out your 14 car grid. And oh my goodness, what a season we've had this 2023 season 3 run. We've had the speed and the the wild encounters of tracks like this, Road America, Road Atlanta. We've had the crazy tight confines of Bathurst and Nordschleife, and it has not disappointed. These cars are fantastic. They have a great community that they've put together, and we've seen some fantastic driving. It has absolutely lived up to its billing. And folks, you got to take one of these Radicals for a spin. You master this car, get back in whatever car you're used to driving, and you will be a better driver for it.
Yeah, this series has been absolutely awesome compared to last season where the car really wasn't driving too good. The community and really myself as a broadcaster were frustrated with the way the car drove because you just really couldn't push it because it was so unstable. compare that to the way this racing has been this season. It's just been absolutely awesome. As you said, we've had a mix of circuits throughout this season. We had the tight, twisty nature of Canadian Tire to round off the season, but we also had an old school North America racetrack of Road America, very fast and certainly still very challenging circuit to kick the year off. So we had a nice variety of circuits this season, put on fantastic racing regardless of what track we were running at. So I'm sure these drivers had some fun, and certainly speaking as a broadcaster this season, I had a lot of fun doing it. So I think this season the schedule was pretty good. Certainly some things that I could complain about, but going into next season, the schedule's been out for a few weeks. We previewed it last week, but I think to round this final broadcast of season 3 off, I think we'll go through it again.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead and let her rip, man.
Alrighty, so let me crack my knuckles. That was the most pathetic knuckle crack in the world there. You can even probably hear it on the microphone. But looking through the Season 4 schedule here for the Radical Racing Challenge, we kick the year off at an old traditional British circuit of Donington Park, one of the oldest circuits in all of the world. They ran Grand Prix there back in the 1930s, so it will be nice to visit there in 2023 for the Radical Racing Challenge. And after that, we have Magny-Cours, another former Formula One circuit that last ran a Formula One race in, I believe, 2007, so that'll be nice to go there. And then we have Oulton Park the next week, then Road America, which is usually the season opener here for the Radicals. That will be week 4 next season. Then we have Spa for week 5, Road Atlanta for week 6. Then we go to Brands Hatch, the Grand Prix circuit. Then we go to VIR, the full course there. That'll be probably the longest lap we run besides the season finale, which I'll get to in a little bit. Then we have Jerez week 9. Then we have Mount Panorama week 10, Canadian Tire week 11. That'll be nice. It's not the season finale next year, but still one of the longer races. And then we go from the longest race laps wise to the longest track of the season. We go to Nordschleife, the rightful spot where it should be for the season finale. It's been the season finale for season 1 and season 2. It wasn't this year, which I think is I'm kind of skeptical on having that as like week 4 as it was this season, but I think we still put on a fantastic show here at Canadian Tire. That'll be week 11, and then to round off next season and to round off 2023 as well, we'll be racing at the Nordschleife. So I think that's going to be a very enticing schedule for these drivers. Certainly some nice tracks, a nice mixture of different kind of circuits, so we'll have to wait and see in a few weeks' time when season 4 kicks off. We'll have to see what kind of racing we have in store next season. But if you're watching this right now, you should hit the subscribe button and tune in next season, because I think it's going to be a hoot.
Absolutely. And wow, it really has been a tremendous season. We have seen some great camaraderie between these drivers, a high level of trust, and putting on some great shows in some of these side-by-side maneuvers. And that's something that happens when you race with the same people all the time. You build community, you practice and race together, and that trust builds up. And you see the kind of racing that we saw today, particularly between Bjorklund and Sanchez. My goodness, they put on a clinic of how to put on an exciting show in these Radicals. So, well, folks, thank you very much for joining us this season. Hopefully we will have more of this Radical action for you in Season 4. I am J.R. Gregory on behalf of myself, Racing Ron Mons, and our good friend Joshua Wilkie and the production carrier. Thanks again for joining us on Apex Racing TV for the Radical Racing Challenge.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.